Okay, so welcome to, painting spring in acrylics. So I've gone for this really, really lovely photograph, but there are other ones as well in the pack. If you wanted to do something different, you're very welcome to. But I usually say if you're fairly new to it, then, if you feel like it'll give you a little bit more confidence to follow the one I'm doing, then, by all means do that one. I'm just going to pick the other ones up. So we've got this one as well, that one will divide into sections really nicely. What we're going to do is kind of just divide things up a little bit, and so will this one. So there's lots of little sections that we can put on the background first. And this one too has got some nice little sections as well. So they're all, you could try any of those if you fancy it. So I've gone for this one. So pretty much, if you feel comfortable being able to sketch out some sections, then by all means, absolutely go for it. I'm going to just pop a few little pencil marks on my board, or whatever surface you're working on for your acrylics. And all I'm doing really is I'm just going to kind of just deconstruct this and work some little sections out, because we're going to put the very background layers on first and then work our way forwards, so that we can layer the trees and everything in the foreground over the top. So my lines are really quite, when you're doing it, if you do it really lightly, because it can scrub up underneath, I'm actually going to go in with just a slightly darker line with these pencil, because otherwise you won't see it on my camera. But normally I would only use a light line. So, a really easy way of doing it is, if you don't feel comfortable kind of working out where everything fits in the composition, you can literally just divide your paper up into four. So I'll just get another pen to do that so you can see it. So literally, you could just fold your demo picture up into four sections, and then that just gives us a little bit of help if you're not sure about it. So when you're beginning, it's quite helpful. So I can see pretty much that the back area here of the beds is about approximately halfway up. So I'm just going to put a very light mark there across whereabouts it goes. And the thing is, with acrylic painting, we can shift things all the time anyway. So I'll make mine quite dark. And then we've got this section here. I would just pop a little line in whereabouts this goes as well. So we've got a few sections of beds there. So we've got this one at the back. So we're working out, if you're not sure of which size to do all those, you can see that this quarter here, you can see how big everything is. So this takes up most of it. If you wanted to transfer that over, even you can, that kind of a little, just a small amount of a grid here. And then I'm just kind of popping in, just this kind of line at the back. Now I'm going to pop just some of the trees in, but I'll do that mainly, and I'm not going to actually paint them in until I've got all of this background in, and the background will probably overlap the trees a little bit. So all I'm doing is just going to sketch out just whereabouts this tree goes. Any of these details and everything will be put on with the paint over the top. It's more just so that, if you're not sure where everything's going and how to measure up whereabouts the bottom goes, it just gives us a good start, really. And then the same, there's another tree here. So really, I'm not putting much effort into these at all, because I'll end up painting over the top of them. But it does help us then now to say, well, this particular bed comes to about here, and this one overlaps here, comes down. It really is very sketchy. There's no detail in here because we'll do that with the paint. And I have learned my lesson a long time ago that there's just no point in doing lots of detail, because you will just be literally painting over the top. Just sketching, really just generally where this big patch goes here. So it kind of comes up. I might just pop just a little section whereabouts, these kinds of these flowers, the colours come in, but I know they intermingle. But it's just, again, just to get a little bit of information down for us, so that when we come to do it, it's a bit easier. And then we're looking, obviously, behind all these trees, there's a lot going on. There's also some other foliage and things in between here, in between these two. Some bushes and things like that. We can't always make everything out. So I'm just going to literally just do a few scruffy lines and then pop in behind where this tree is going to come. So again, I'm looking, I suppose you could put your centre mark there if you want to. I'm move this tree over actually. Just pop my tree. But again, I'm going to be doing a lot of the background in there. It may come into the trees. And then this one, because it's such, and the reason for that is normally we get the background in so it looks much more natural rather than trying to squeeze this between, which then it doesn't feel like the flow is there. So that's why I would do that. This in. So when we first get going, that's when it can be the hardest bit of when we start with any new medium. Or any new technique really, because we're having to think a lot with, we're having to think a lot with different parts of our brain with the artwork. So, we do actually light a lot of neurons. A lot of it's problem solving. How thick do I make it? How thin? What do I put on next? Where does this go? And how do I get this effect? So all of that, there's quite a bit of grappling. So it does feel a little bit, I'd say, that learning process isn't always easy in the very beginning, but once we get into full flow and we kind of get well into it and we're working out how to use the paint, then we drop in and we start to really relax, and that's when our muscles relax. And then we go into full flow. So that last part of the session, that second half will feel much, much easier because we can get really into full flow and it becomes almost like meditative. So that we're exercising a totally different part of the brain then. And that's really, really good for us actually, that amount of time, because we're using so many different parts of the brain. So I follow, I've been reading a book by a neuroscientist because I'm fascinated by the creative process, and he's puts everything down in layman's terms, which makes it really easy read. And basically, he says he's talking about all of this, the fact that art is one of the very few things that exercises all of those parts of the brain. That if we do something like Sudoku, it's great, but it only exercises one part, whereas art, you're going through those three different phases that I've just mentioned. And it actually is one of the few things that lights up all the neurons across the brain in over the session. So it's really good, really, really good for us holistically as well. Heart rate can go down, blood pressure can go down, like by the end. There's so many good things about it. And the only other thing that he can think about that he mentions that's in line with the art process, the creative process, is being bilingual, learning a second language and being bilingual is also amazing for the brain. So anyway, so I hope that helps. So we've just got to kind of tell our brain it's all going to be fine once we start. So that's all I'm popping in for now, or I might just pop in a little bit of like where this tree is going here. Yeah. It's what I do tell my art students a lot, because it's quite nice to know how good it is for us. I'm just popping in just a couple of bits here that are a little bit darker slightly here, just to remind me. Okay, so really we don't need too much. So just enough that we've got an idea of some of the sections we might need to think about. So I'm going to go in first of all, and this is what I was saying, that with the acrylics, often we come in with the background first, and it's deciding what colour backgrounds do we actually pop in. Because there's a multitude of different colours here. So the first thing I would be thinking about is what's well behind there is the sky. So obviously we've got more sky here, and then we would overlayer. So we're getting some sky colouring because it comes through in a few areas, doesn't it? So I would be thinking, wherever we can see these bits coming through, Not everywhere necessarily, because some areas are very thickly coated, but I'd be thinking about, maybe getting a little bit of background in there. So let me see what colours we've got. So something like, you could try, well, you can, if you've got a set and you want to try out a few different things, I always encourage people to try out different tones to see which you like. So with the blues, you tend to, in a set, tend to get, ultramarine blue, which is a classic blue for skies in our country, I would say. It's more of your sky blue. Or like a phthalo blue, which is much a kind of a deeper blue and gives you more of it's not turquoise, but it's kind of a real, got some real depth to it. Or then you've got the cerulean blue. So I'm showing, I kind of go through these because with the paint along, because you might think, I haven't tried those before. I wondered what they're sat there for. And it gives just you an opportunity to experiment and explore, which is a really important part of the process. I think until we start to have a real try with things, we kind of don't cross a lot of the barriers with it than we do once we have a real good play. And then I'm going to put some white on here. So titanium white, which is really good for mixing. If I can get it out of the tube today. There we go. There we are. So I'm just going to start with a combination of those, and I tend to have my little palette knife handy just because it's easy, but you can do this with a small brush if you've got a small brush to do it. I tend to just organise my palette in quite an organised way here. I'm actually going to get some of the greens out as well while I'm doing that. So I'm going to get sap green, which is a very classic, or you might have chrome green or something like that. It's quite similar. So it's more of a colour that that the trees you tend to find in the trees. Now, if you've got a yellow green, you can add that. That is really very much green with more yellow in it. But I'm just going to get myself some yellow out. I've got some cadmium yellow. Cadmium yellow is just warmer. There is more kind of just a small amount of red in that, as opposed to a lemon yellow, which is a very kind of acidic colour. But you could try either. This is, I would say, is more lemony yellow down here, and this is much warmer here. So we're thinking about whenever we're doing any painting to do with acrylics or anything like that, we're thinking about the warm tones and the cooler tones in there, um, and and how we can use that to effect as well. So I'm just going to hang on there for a moment, and then I'm just going to go in. I'm going to get a little bit of this blue here, which is ultramarine, and bring it in. So I tend to organise my colours around the outside so that I can use the middle to mix, and also it alleviates when people get frustrated because they've kind of mixed everything up already and then it's been wasted. So that kind of stops that. So as you can see, it's very kind of got more of our kinds of summer blues, isn't it? But whatever you do, I'm just adding a small amount of water to mine, just going to test the colour. I'm not really adding an awful lot of water because mine are quite buttery. So this is where all the sets will vary enormously. Well, not enormously actually, because oils it's more so. But what you'll have, there's a difference between um, a heavy body acrylic and just a medium to light body acrylic. So the medium to light ones go on kind of more smoothly, but the other ones, the heavy bodied acrylic, are like you can almost use them like some of them are like paste. So you would need to add more water to get them a little bit more buttery. If you want fancy getting on these colours coming behind basically. So you could go with just a nice mixed with titanium white and ultramarine, or you might want to try another. I've got some cerulean blue here, which is very reminiscent of a lot of kind of Mediterranean countries and things like that. And really, this is where the joy comes in. It's that connection with colour, which I know I've said to you that really I'm very inspired by colour. I tend to go with some things I will mix, but other things if I really like a colour, I'll use it. And I'm actually just going to mix those two together. So it's a little bit softer with that French ultramarine in, but it's also got a touch of this lovely colour that I really like. So then once you've tested and you're happy, so rinse this off. Making sure our brushes are nice and clean in between is quite important when we're going from the cool colours like blues to the warmer greens and things like that. So having a bit of tester paper is fabulous because you're halfway there by the time you even get on, because not all the colours look exactly as they are. So then I'm going to go in with a nice flat brush. Okay, so the reason I use a flat brush really is you just get a really nice even blend if that's what you're wanting between the layers, and you can easily work it backwards and forwards as well, which is so it covers to get to block out an area, it covers it really well. So I'm just going to go in with this. I'm going to probably add the tiniest amount of water to this because mine is quite buttery. But if yours is a heavier body acrylic, then add a bit more water. What you want is you want it not dripping down the page as in watercolor, but so that you get enough coverage that you can't see through your page. So I'm going to bring this in. As I said, you can go side if you've got a bigger board than me, you might move it side to side. You can also move it in a little bit as well if you want to, over those trees as well, so that in case you decide to make your trees a little bit thinner, then by all means get that in. So I'm just now picking out just a few areas in here where I think that I'm getting more sunlight coming through there. You can just paint the whole thing blue. You can also use different kinds of blues as well within a composition. Now, I often do this if it was if there was more coming through, I would actually pop in a few different areas because sometimes you get more, towards the horizon, for example, you often get a lighter colour. So I might, whilst it's still damp, start to work in a little bit of make it a little bit lighter in there as you go. I'm just adding a slightly lighter one through there. I'm not going everywhere with this particular blue because we've got quite a heavy build-up of green there. But I'm just making sure that where I think there might be a little bit showing through, that I get some in there. Just popping them in through. So if anything's coming through the background, it's there. You can bring in any colours. So this is a bit of phthalo I'm just mixing in. Just gonna have just a slight bit there, just to vary the colour slightly. Okay, so I tend to have two waters, one that's got kind of dark and cool colours in it, and another one that I use for warms. My other warmer colours, so that it means you don't keep having to change your water all the time as well, and you want to get stuck in. So there we go. So we're thinking about the next layer. Now I actually work quite a lot of the time process top to bottom. Often that's because the sky comes first and that's the very background layer we need to think about. But also you tend to get with gardens or landscapes a lot of overlap. So, we can see there each of the things coming to the front overlap. So if you get the layer done behind, but also from a very practical reason, it stops you getting your hand stuck to the board or, just going over the work that you've done as well. And I don't know if some of that's because I'm left-handed as well, I think, to avoid smudging the work. So what we've got now is we've got to kind of work out, we've got all this lovely foliage and everything coming in the background here. And these trees in front are the very last, and the foliage on these trees are a little bit darker, we can see. So I'm thinking about all the colours that are going kind of right behind here. There's also, even behind those trees, there seems to be some darker foliage here. So I am actually going to work, some of these colours that are at the back here, and then get some of these darker ones in, and then overlap some of the trees. So a lot of what we're doing is we're just trying to decide what comes first. So I've got some, I'm going to add a dark green. So this one is Hooker's green, which is a very typical colour. You can always try phthalo green. If you've only got a sap green, for example, one green, you can add also a little bit of brown to that if you want to, or a bit of blue, which I'll show you. I'll just put the brown on there. Now, quite often, quite a fan of, like, Hooker's green is quite a dark, like blue-based green anyway, this one here. So if I just pop that on there, we can see it is quite dark. It's quite nice for the back, but if it's not dark enough, for anything that's in the distance, I do tend to have a little trick where I add, I'll add some ultramarine blue to that rather than brown, because even the brown, the burnt sienna, which is the brown I'm using. So there we go. So it darkens things off even more. But if you just mix that, I kind of come away from my palette knife just for a minute with a small amount. What it does when we add cool colours to the palette, cool dark colours recede, so we can drop a little bit of a blue-based tone into our greens and things at the back, and that will help it further go backwards, because people will say, well, you know, my everything at the back seems to be coming forward. What can I do? And I'll say, well, you just drop some. Make sure your colours are cool enough as well, so you can drop those in to help that with happen. So there's some things in the background here as well. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of water in now. So I'm going to start over here, getting the shadowy sides in. And this is really where I'm starting to drop in some really fun technique in there. Well, dabbling, actually, I'd say. It's where your brushwork comes alive. So you don't have to just paint in a block of colour. You can start to use the acrylic paint really quite thickly. So I'm going to pop some darkish colours in there. And then what I will do is overlap some of the brighter colours. So you might want to work in a little bit even darker. So I'm trying to get the dark ones in first where possible. We can't always do that, just because sometimes you can't always tell how, like here it's very fiddly. I might pop a little bit in. But then certainly over here, which overlaps there, I'm going to think about now, where are the lighter bits coming in? So I'm going to take my green. I'm going to see what happens when I add a bit over the top, because what we really want is contrast. And I'm just going to, just with this little round brush here, just start to pop in, some of the texture that I am seeing nice and thickly. So I'm really just taking this as it is and just adding it. So that will give us some more, it'll start to make it feel a bit more 3D rather than just being a flat brush. But then further than that, to make some of these little bits that are highlighted at the front, then I'm just going to go in. So I need enough contrast there. I'm just going to go in with a little bit of yellow here. So don't be frightened of using some brighter colours as well. I'm just going to take a few of those and just highlight them. Sometimes we think of highlights as just being white, but actually they're often nice to go in, especially on neutral colours, like with where there's lots of green, is to go in with some real brights. Now you can mix a tint with white. So you could mix a bit of a green with white instead and see if you prefer that. But as I said, I quite like to drop in some colour. So I'm just mixing in a bit of white and dark there. So I'll just put a bit wherever I can see it, have it highlighted. So you'll be able to start to see the difference when you have a go there. Now, a lot of this foliage here is overlapping this tree. There's a little bit coming, actually, just then, can't see. No, it appeared to be, but it's not, it's going behind. So, I can start to think about that as well. So I'll do this little section here because we can see that that's the only bit of overlap. So I would go in with a nice fine brush, if you've got one, or the tip, right at the tip. If you haven't got really tiny fine brush, you can go in with it right at the tip. And just, I'm going to use a little bit of the ultramarine, burnt umber, which is the really dark brown. And again, you can drop blue into that as well. Just gives it a slightly different colour. And then I tend to hold my brush a little bit further near the end for foliage, for trying to make loose, natural feeling branches. So I'm going to do that now. You won't be able to maybe see something from the other side here. I'll bring it this side to help. Yeah. I try and keep it just very loose, so it's very natural feeling. And I find holding my brush at the end gives me that the most easy way of doing it, really. I'm just going to mix a bit of this brown here because there's a few twigs going up there I can see, but they're not as dark. But putting the branches down, laying some branches down, is really a helpful way of being able to attach and come over the top with some of those other colours. Going behind this tree here.
Is it possible to move your camera across because we can't actually see what you're doing?
I'll just press pause a moment. So yeah, so I'm just now going to think about the greens that are going to go in here. And then obviously I mentioned before, you can add greens. You can add some yellow to kind of lighten it up. I'm just going to reach in and get I've got some Naples yellow, or you can use lemon yellow as well if you want to kind of think about the couple of different kinds of yellows that you can use. Naples is kind of quite bright, but it's a nice, you can use it, it's quite good to mix with as well. So I'm just going to mix my greens here. I want to get some of this foliage on there that's coming behind that tree there. So I'm just going to take a little bit of green, bit of this yellow, and I'm going to see if it gets the tone that I want. And if it's not quite the right tone, because maybe it's too warm, I might just try a little bit of Naples yellow in there as well. And a lot of this experimenting is really, with the colours and everything, is really important. Okay, I'm fairly happy with that. So you can use an old bristly brush or a little fan brush to have a little go at popping those on as well if you want. I'll just grab my fan brush and show you. So it'll be more effective in the middle, but I'll just give you a little show. So a lot of people, when they're using a fan brush, tend to load the whole thing up because that's a natural instinct to go in. But actually, if you want to get a little bit more control over it, just load up kind of the edge of the fan brush like that. And then just have a little practice with it. And then you just literally tapping over and just creating, you're kind of layering up those lovely leaves, bringing things up and down. And as I said, it gives you more control if you've just got a little bit, but you want it to splay out like that, really. So you get lots of little marks. So when they get a bit old and a bit bristly, actually, they're quite good. So I'll keep going down with that. We're just kind of adding on those. Now, what you do tend to need, sometimes it's difficult to see the leaves unless you've got a contrast. It's like a lot of things with art. You get, when you have that really fabulous contrast between two colours, that's when you see them. So just have a little look if there's anywhere you want to just go in with a slightly different colour. Could be yellow, it could be a green. I'm just going to go in with a green just so that that sticks out there. And then then we're looking kind of between, what's going on here as well. So there's lots of colours and things going in there, but right behind that there is some more shadow. So I'm going to get some more of that shadow in with my round brush. And just, it's almost, sometimes we can't really paint if we can't see it, but we can just put a suggestion of what we think is there. And I'm just going to go in with a similar tone to, you know, and think maybe it's just a common theme in this garden. It's been planted up, and I'm going to probably overlap that anyway. And if there's any, again, if there's any variation on that, you can just use, you know, the edge of your brush to kind of just put a little bit of contrast in there. But then, you know, a lot of this is coming over the top, isn't it? Now there is some contrast in here between the yellow. So again, I'm still going to go in between these two trees. I'm still going to go in and put some of these lovely branches in. So again, I'm holding this, I'm not holding it. The further down you go with your brush, the more control you'll get, but you don't always get really natural ones because our hand kind of wants to put pressure on the brush end. So I'm just literally just going to let it kind of come down and just make its own shape. Just need a little bit of water on there. And again, just have a look at what kind of paints yours are. You need a little bit of looseness on the brushes to get them to move. To keep the flow of the branches. And you know, branches are lovely anyway. They're so beautiful, aren't they? Because they you know, they're very ad hoc. They come here and there, and they literally do branch off, which is interesting. Oh yeah, so it's just keeping it nice and easy there. Now, while that's drying, just a moment, because I don't want to go in when it's still too damp because it will pick up the dark and it'll end up moving the dark around. So I'm just going to give it a moment to dry. And whilst that's drying, just start to come in here and look at some of the colours that are around the base here as well, as in the middle that go behind these branches. So there's quite a lot of other colours and things behind there. So I'm going to get these shadows again at the bottom, just there. A mixture of colour. I think this is where I've put a general mark of where I think they're going to come to. And I've got some blue greens in there. But again, just explore the colours that you've got in your palette and just see, you know, what you like. A lot of it's developing a preference. Sometimes people really don't like a strong contrast or for it to be very dark, and that's absolutely fine. If you're finding, you think, I really don't like this darkness on here, it's too much, then go lighter. There's nothing to say you have to do. Everything has to have a very, very deep contrast. Some people like it deeper, other people don't. All sorts going on here. I'm really trying to create what I can see down here, and there's some other darkish colours coming up. So we can still layer the other ones between it because we're working in similar tones, which makes it very easy to do that. And then I'm just looking behind. There's some quite, to me, those feel warm. So I'm looking at the types of yellows that are in there. And I am layering over just carefully. You can, if you put it on nice and thickly over the top, it shouldn't get too muddied. We don't want it to muddy us. We're always trying to, I think, with artists, as artists, is trying to keep our colours fresh where we want them fresh and blended where we want them blended. So I'm just popping those in. And that's going to create a little bit of contrast over the top, actually. And I may even go in and pop a little bit more thickness on. So sometimes with the yellows, they might not be opaque. So you may even have a set that says translucent. So they're a little bit less opaque. It's just each brand, you know, does sometimes do that. So I'll see some other colours in this background as well. And up here, it's quite dark in there. So pop some of these in. And again, because it's in the distance, we don't want to be too detailed about it. We do want this to pop back a little bit. So we're not really, you know, worried too much about making it look particularly like something. We'll know it's the trees and it's going back. our brain makes a lot of the, makes a lot of the links as well between. So I'm just starting to layer in some other colours there just while I'm waiting for this. I think that's getting there. So I'm trying to look at here where it's very bright in there. So I'm going to go back and start a mix again because this one I put in some Naples yellow, so it's not quite as bright as I want it to be over here. Certainly where you get these greens down here. So I'm going to go back and mix some more bright yellow in, and I'm just going to go in with brights in here rather than whites. So sometimes when we add white in or something that's got a white colour in it, like the Naples, it can take out the colour and it can make it less vivid. So, which is great if we want pastel effects, but not if we want in these really vivid kind of green colours that we're seeing. And I may also put just the tiniest bit of cerulean blue just in there. Very small. There we go. So here, I'm going to just go back over there, dot back over here, and then I'll come back over here and use this same colour that I've just layered up there. So I'm wanting to go in with some light colours like this, but I also want to go in with some that are slightly darker as well. So again, if you want to use a fan brush, or you can just just dot it on like we've just been doing, just really ad hoc. You can follow the line of those branches going down if you want to. So I'll just demonstrate using that brush. So you can use either, use your, or an old bristly brush works well as well, because you get kind of less less accurate, which is what we want. We want a natural feel if we're trying to recreate nature. And then I'm just going to go in with my fan brush again and just develop that a little bit further. Just add a little bit more depth to it. It's quite, I think what a fan brush does as well is it adds it quite quickly. So it's quite handy for covering lots of areas. Otherwise, we might be there, forever. You've got to either work quite fast with your brush or your bristly brush, or have a go at that. So now I'm just going to start to overlayer some bright yellows now, because that's what I'm personally seeing in there. Again, I'm just working through with my fan brush, and it's going to create some nice depth as well. So we're going to feel like, we've got these different layers of colours, and we can see each of the colours better than when we've got the others in place. And I may even go in with a little bit of that light one too. You could make an even lighter mix if you wanted, with a little bit of the white in there. I'm going to pop it. I think the thing is, with the highlights, it's using them sparingly. I think if you use them too much, what happens is, you can't see them because they're everywhere. So just maybe use them in a couple of places. I'm just going to come in there. Just add a couple to there and through. It just gives a sense of the light coming through as well. And then we can, keep moving through. Now, if you feel like you want a little bit more of of it to make sense, then you can start to think about the trees. But I'm going to keep working on this bit of the process really, and building up these colours in the background there. I'm going to use my flat brush. Let me use my round brush for the moment, actually, and just kind of blob in. The beauty of acrylics, though, as I said, is you can use them quite thickly. Or you can use them quite thinly as well, or you can use them with, with a fan brush. But these are more patches. It's when we get to the top and they seem to overlap. So I'm just going to build up these little yellowy areas against there. Just gives us a sign that there's an awful lot going on. So I'm just making sure that that's clean. So now my brush has started to pick up a bit of the of the darker colour. So I just want to make sure I've got some of this cleaner paint here. Keep it nice and bright. So we're just really working through a process of looking at what we're seeing coming through, and this will set up. It will the set it up really well for when we put those branches and things over the top of it. And then when we start to do the foreground, that will just all sink in. So sometimes we're very much invested in the area that we're doing, but actually it's part of our background. So, we need it to be there. It's important. It's nice to capture the feel of the trees. And that's really, I think, what I feel as an artist that I really enjoy doing is I've moved away from feeling I need things to be really perfect and moved very much more into, trying to get my artist impression of what it is that I'm doing in there, of what I can see myself and get a feel for it with the brush marks. I think once you do that as an artist, your practice changes hugely because you just go very naturally and your brushwork just kind of just goes along in a really lovely way. Right, so just still popping on some of these in here, and then I'm going to pop in some of these branches as well. I'm trying to leave some gaps too where these light colours coming through. Even though there's quite a lot, isn't there, of the different patches, but the different patches are what gives it depth, so that it doesn't all look like one massive area. So I'm just leaving a few, and you can also make it up a little bit as well, artistic license. Thank goodness we have got that, because sometimes we take things out we don't really like. I do all the time, and it's what makes our composition feel really attractive. If a branch is there that doesn't feel particularly very nice, then you just take that out. Absolutely fine. People have been doing that for centuries, taking things out they're not sure about. And putting things in for that matter, an extra tree because it looks a bit nicer and we've got something, we feel like something's missing or something else there. Okay. So I feel like I'm getting to a point where I'm just going to start now to think about getting some of these branches in around the tree as well. So I'm going to go back to my burnt umber there. I'm just going to, before I add any more, again, I'm just following, just kind of holding it at the end, just nicely dragging it on the tip, all on the tip. And if there's some little gaps, that's fine, because it would have, it would naturally have a few small gaps there. And then again, all of those tiny little branches coming down, just press less on the brush and you'll get those weaving down there. And we'll just keep going with what you're seeing. Some of it may be really covered up, but we can cover that up, once we start to pop that other front layer on there. I don't think, really, I think the more naturally you can get the branches, the easier it becomes to paint branches as well. When we're trying to, create all these really straight lines, that's when it's more tricky. And they do bend and twist. Whenever you've seen them. And as I said, you can leave some out if you're not keen. And then again, it's like on the front of there. So I want to get the feeling that this is popping forward, and this is a little trick as well. So you can use your round brush again and just dot it on, and you can get two different colours on there, or you can do the same with this. So I'm going to go in, I want a slightly darker green actually for that, because I want it to feel like it's popping forward. So I'm going to, I wonder if I could actually just use the sap green as it is. Just add a little bit of water to them. Tiny bit. So let's just try, see if it's giving me the effect that I want. Maybe a bit darker. I'll add some of this phthalo green in there. If you have a different green as well, by all means use that. I'm just trying to show you as minimum colours really as you can with just an ordinary set what you can do, because you can add a bit of brown to that as well, just to make it not quite as dark as this, but stand out a bit. And some of this I'll start to pop on once we've got the tree in place as well. So what you can do, so going back to that, is you get one colour on there and then another colour with it. So I might go for these two together. So a bit of that, a bit of the dark and a bit of that. And then sometimes you get two colours and at the same time. But it's got to be stand out as being darker anyway, so you need a darker colour. I'm going to have to darken mine off again. It's better. You want it to kind of pop forward really with that. And then that will overlap on this tree. I'm still going through, so I'm going to do a little bit more onto that. I'll reserve that colour for when I'm going to come across those trees, the front of the trees with this little bit in here. And there's a little bit of foresty green there as well. But I still want to pop in some of the colours that go behind there. I'm just going to, well, I'll demonstrate it's kind of this top area, and then we'll take a natural pause and I'll come and chat to everyone, see how you're getting on there. Enjoy the process of really kind of getting in, doing that lovely, whatever's coming out of your hand really is the really enjoyable bit about this. It might be that you've got some overlap between the colours. You might have a bit of, popping a bit of depth on top of a shadowy one. You might need to make your shadowy one a bit darker if you're thinking, well, actually, that needs to be darker, then you can do that. And then keep looking at the other colours you've got between. So I'm going in again with these little slightly lighter ones behind, a bit of yellow, a bit of green, lighter green. You can go keeping with your round brush like that, just kind of dabbing on these areas where it's very bright. Pop that in. Keeping it a little bit more muted in the background there with that lighter green as well, so that when I put this darker green over, it'll really pop. So I'm going in with these two lighter colours together in the background. In there. Just trying to many colours. I can't see. And then I'm moving across. So I'm actually leaving these little bits for the moment until I've got the tree trunks in. We're putting all the prep work in behind it. Again, there's lots of really nice colours in there. And the light ones as well. I'm leaving a few gaps so that we're getting the light coming through as well. So it's interesting. So if we were doing skies or something like that, I tend to, paint with a big flat brush. But we can build up where we've got texture, actually, build the texture up in the background, and it kind of gives quite a natural feel. And we can pop in some of these brighter areas here. Until we put the darker green in the foreground over the top. It's lovely there when you see all the different colours that you get of these trees. I can't wait till they all come back. Odd. So here, for example, I've lost the lightness coming through this area here. So you can easily just pop that back with acrylics. I'm actually going to go in with a bit of white in there. I could go in with a bit of the blue that I use if I wanted to and keep it even lighter. So we can always overlay, which is really marvellous actually. And kind of put that back if we want to, anywhere at all, you can even do it. Put just a bit here. So I'm looking at that now. Just popping a bit there. So we've got plenty of opportunity to do that. So it's going to look a bit like a patchwork at the moment, because we've not got these trees in, and that's the next thing we're going to do, just so that we can feel a bit more comfortable with it. What's happening. Sometimes the process is easier when we can see it's going to work. So I'll just do this little bit and then we'll stop and take a natural pause and have a chat. And you can grab a coffee and stuff as well. So I'm just looking at the trees. So again, looking at the shadowy areas, and obviously this is a bit more mossy. So I might be bringing in a bit of a Acadian red here. So because I want to warm up some of these browns, you could bring in some other types of brown as well if you wanted, like burnt sienna. Although I don't feel it's too warm, but if you want to try that, you can. Yeah, so I've got a bit of buff titanium as well, and all buff titanium is, if you haven't used this one before, it's basically titanium white that's unbleached. So titanium white's actually bleached. So that sometimes is quite nice as a base, but you can get, you can use, just put a small amount of yellow into the white and a bit of brown to get the same effect, but I might just use that as a mixer. We'll see. Just cleaning off my brush. So I want get some shadow sides in here first if I can. So again, I'm coming down to some the darkest one here. We always tend to get a shadow side of the tree, so that you'll know that just from when you're spending any time outside. And the more you look, you see that obviously one area is in the shadow, usually kind of in the middle, and one side's not. So just going right down, getting these shadow sides in first. Now it'll look really harsh against the white, but don't worry, we will soften it down soon. We try and get the shadows in. The reason we try and get the shadows in either within the first or the second part of painting with acrylics is so what can happen is it can really flatten down if you don't. You can really flatten down your artwork because we know that dark colours recede, so they go backwards. So if we put that on last, all that lovely fluffy work and all of the things that we've done, it can flatten those fast. So it's nice to get this on a bit more time. So you can just follow the twists and turns as well within the trees. And then again, we're just working our way backwards really here. So I'm like looking at what I'd say a mid-tone. So not the darkest, not the lightest. So I'm just now mixing just a little bit here. And kind of try and get some of the textures in. It's quite, I've just mixed a little bit of the sap green into the burnt umber. And again, the beauty of it is we can put it on quite thickly and we can start to create the shape again. Pull down, get some of those lovely, some of the lovely bark markings of the bark just by using your brush and leaving some of the paint, standing proud a little bit. So I'm just going in really and lightening these up in a similar way because this one's obviously a bit more in shadow, so this is a bit darker. So I'm just paying attention to that. Seems darker on all sides, this one. And don't worry about the bottoms of the trunks for the moment because a lot of those are being overlapped by the flowers, so we can allow for that, that's fine. Again, I'm just looking at if there's any other bits that are a little bit shadowy, so I'm just following. It might be that you've got some shadowy bits, at the bottom of the trunk, or where the knots are, the gnarly knots on the tree, before I lighten up the other areas. I've done this tree a little bit thicker actually, but that's fine. And then, if you're wanting to get lighter, like these two are much lighter on the outside, then, we will just start to use a lighter color. This is where I'm just going to add a very small amount of cadmium red because it feels mossy. And the moss color tends to have red in it. So just add as much red. I've got a cadmium red, which is slightly warmer than say an alizarin crimson, which is more cool toned because it's got a bit more blue in it. I'm going to go in with that, see what happens. So by having a couple of mid-tones in here, this really, really can make our artwork even more, have even more depth to it and roundness. And if we just use one mid-tone. It's quite nice to play around with a few, 2 or 3 even. Gives it more depth. Let's mix a little bit more. And again, there might be bits now as you come into the bottom of the tree and things, you want to get some of these shadows in. And add those while it's damp. That's a really nice way of doing it because you can actually blend it a little bit in with the paint that's there. It's very blendable as acrylic. As long as you've got enough enough fluid to make it move, basically. Then it will blend. If it feels a bit stiff, you can always just add a little bit of liquid to it, a little bit of water. And then, thinking about the even lighter colours, what do you want to go in for there? Do you want to add, this is where I do add tints of white. So when I keep saying tint, I mean a colour mixed with white, basically. That's quite a nice colour. Quite like that. But yeah, I do put white tints in for the highlights on trees because you can get some lovely tones with them. So, start to kind of just play with some of the brush strokes that you get on these trees. Get some lovely shapes. And again, there's nothing stopping you using two colours. Intermittently or even three, and just kind of getting that lovely blended side, because that's one of the beauties of tree trunks. It's just really, really lovely. You could find so much inspiration in a forest or a wood. And then, I'm going to go in here with a little bit of just this Naples yellow, or you can just add a bit of white to a yellow as well if you want to try that. And I'm just going to see what that's like as a highlight. And again, it's your interpretation here. So this is where you can start to add a few little colours and things of your own. And those trees will really start now to take shape. All the different things in. You might even over the top there, you may even have some, you may even want to kind of blend in a few other little colours. Can you see anything else? I'm going to pop some brighter yellows in here. You could even pop a pinkish colour or a bit of orange and red there. And just see what colours you're seeing. I think one of the beauties of starting to really think in colour is that it opens up a whole new world of what can work. And then again, you can, but sometimes we do need to add a bit of shadow over the top. I'm just making sure it blends in and it's not too harsh. Just because we don't always see those shadows appearing until a bit later. So I'm just going to add that in there. You can always go down, down a sizing brush as well if you want to. Yeah. So start these trees, we're starting to transform just by observing the shapes and the colours and the tones in there. Do the same with the other ones as well. You can go down to a smaller brush as well, by the way, if you want a bit more control on that. I'm just using the tip of it to get the line. So you can also use a flat brush as well and have an experiment, see what happens there. I'm just going to pop the dark shadow side back in there because I've gone a bit. Just overlap with a bit of this green so it's not too buttoned down. I'm just paying attention to all of these little, shapes and things like that. It's really interesting just how adding a bit of red to a green just makes, really, really changes that as well. And then we can pop over, any of those branches that over this side as well, get those into place um, as well. Just popping a few of these colours in here that I missed. And then obviously again, once we do the foreground in here again, then it's going to change again. I'm going back to using the tip of my brush. I'm just squeezing out. So sometimes acrylic paint can get stuck down the bottom of your brush. So give it a really good rinse out and then just kind of just make sure you're squeezing up just gently if it feels like it's filling out and getting a little bit wide, it's just because the plastic in the acrylics gets stuck in the bottom. So this is where I'm just going to use the end of my brush again. I'm just holding it a bit loosely and trying to get in some of these branches, just nice and loose. Some underneath, some over the top. And the other ones that you're in here, you can see, and down. And then we'll pop that final layer of, these lovely branches and things over the top there as well. And then we'll stop. But as I said, you're in charge of what you put down. It might be you don't like, a lot of the ones in the top. You think, oh, I'm not keen on those, and leave them off. So, then I'm just wanting now to add these colours in here. So we're getting real palette now full of colours, aren't we? So it's like finding the green. I'm going to go in with one there. Add. Mm-hmm. As I said, can be a bit more opaque. Sorry, a bit more translucent, so they're not, you don't, it's not quite as much pigment in them. I was adding a bit of hooker's green in there as well, so it just stands out a bit. So again, you can decide whether but the biggest thing about it is you just follow those branches across and kind of just spread them out across the tree, follow them down. They cross over the trees in front, and it's managing to leave some gaps between there as well, so that we know that these are crossing over the trees. Or you can, as I said, have a go with your fan brush. Pop it on that way. Hold it that way. Whichever you feel most comfortable. Just adding like a real series of lots of little dots there, aren't we? So how we can feel that we're getting the feel of those trees just kind of moving in over the top. That lovely canopy. not how we're trying to replicate it. It's like the feelings of the art are really important. Here. So yeah, so we want to cross it. Some of these just cross over because those branches naturally go over the top, and some don't. And again, it's just adding to those trees as well. If you're wanting a little bit of a highlight in there, just so we get this, so we get a little bit of a, it's quite dark, so I'm going to have just a subtle one rather than being too bright. I'm just going to mix that in actually. So this is where I'm deliberately mixing, deliberately blending that with that there. You know, sometimes we don't want to muddy things up, but sometimes we want them to blend. So whilst we have areas of drying paint, we can just go in and just start to add some lovely effects there. So again, this is going to change once we think about popping this foreground in, so it will change again. The process again, everything was going to look different. But we've got, you know, there's all sorts of little helpful tips, and I hope that first half has helped. And I'm just going to take a pause here, and I'll come and. Okay, so we'll have a little look at moving further down now, and looking at the layers here. So again, when we're really in the distance, we've got a few bits and pieces going on here. I'm going to kind of work across. We've got some flowers, the tops of these flower beds, and we really can hardly see a thing. So in this case, when you can really hardly see a thing, I'm just going to make this not detailed in the slightest. So I'm going to go in with just some bright yellows on the top here. Again, you could go for a different yellow if you wanted to. Bright yellow, I'm just going to continue in. I'm literally just going to pop in just what I can see, which is almost looks like a bumpy row behind here. And then the same, so maybe a bit of red over there. Actually, I might pop the red in on that side, which is a kind of a red between the trees here. Again, we can't really see much of it. And we want to keep it like that, really. You know, we're on these back layers. We don't want that to pop forward. We want to keep it nicely in the distance. And then, you know, another layer of yellows overlapping. And again, I'll be going straight in just without any water here, just with the paint layering it up. But if you've got the heavy bodied ones, you might need a bit of water in there. And then swapping it over here. You can almost we've almost got a layer of green. I think it must be the stems underneath there, but it's still a bit difficult to see. So here, again, just like looking at the green, I want to go in with there. And again, we're just literally going in, layering those down. I'm just being a bit mindful not to go over the red too much because it can get a little bit muddy if we start doing that. And we're just pulling it down, really. A little bit goes in front. And then we're looking again where the other patches, if we can see, of this green. And I do think that's what it is. I think it must be. And this is why, you know, as an artist, we're just interpreting what we can see. It might not be that, but that's, you know, you just do what you think you can see there. And I'm looking at these intermingled layers, I'm just popping that in. Very freely going for it, really. I try not to think about the outcome and just paint. I find my happiest days painting are when it's like that. Okay. So working our way across, and then just literally, again, we're just adding in what we can see. I'll just get some more dark green. So there's this bush in front of here. It's got quite a lot of shadow in it, so that's quite is a slightly easier design, when we're actually painting it to make it into a, because it's more easy to see. Sometimes when it's a mixture of so many shadows and so many brighter bits, it's very difficult to see the shadows, but that one's a little bit easier to see, so that's good. We are just working our way down here. I'm just going to put a little tint together here, which has got a bit of green, a bit of yellow. And then again, I'm just dotting this on because there's a bit of a highlight at the top here. It's kind of poking over. It's much lighter. Still goes behind the tree though. And there might even be another bit of a tree here. But again, don't worry about having to capture every single thing on here. Just pick out the bits that you like. It might be that you're discovering that you're really enjoying kind of dabbing things on. Go for things that look like that. I'm going to just change a couple of the colours in there. I'm bringing this down where I think that it will get overlapped. We can interpret these how we want to. I'm just adding a bit of highlight over the top of some of these bushes here to just give it a little bit more depth. And I'm just going in with a yellowy colour actually, so it's a bit of a yellowy tone there. It's a bit of Naples yellow. And then again, we can now start to look, and we're just kind of making, we're just going through with these, these colour blocks here. So there's another, these are the ones at the top, and then we've got reds and yellows intermittent here. So I've got some of these reds in front of the tree. I might just make them a bit thicker. You can alternate the reds as well. You can even go in with pinky red, so you can pop a little bit of you can put a bit of rose or something in there. I'm just kind of building up these colours. I'm still at this point. Our brain will work out what these flowers are just from the shapes that we put in the front ones. And then again, I'm just going to go in with some of these bright yellow colours here. Just dot them in intermittently. And as I said, our brain works that bit out really from the foreground once we've got that into place. Mhm. And then again, we've got, more layers of green in here, and it follows on from here, really, and some darker layers at the bottom, but I will put those in because we're going to overlap it with white, so that'll be fine. So here, I'm just kind of going to go in with a darkerish green. And again, it feels like it's coming down. So you can put two colours together there. You could put a dark one and a light one if you wanted to. And, and then you get this kind of almost stripy effect. So it feels like it's it feels like the base of those tulips. And I'm just pulling that down, literally just making pulling down strokes there. Because again, it's still in the background, really. You could put a little bit of a highlight in if you want to, where it feels a bit lighter. Just pick out a couple of spots where it's capturing the light a little bit, maybe on the top, somewhere near the front, or just use a lighter green. And then the base is very, very shadowy again. So I'll just go in around here, because obviously this is where the edge of the next bed is. Popping in a bit of making some of it a little bit darker. It just tells us it's a very deep bed where we get those extra shadows, and this helps, pop it out. And then again, we've got, so we're continuing to look at the overlap there. We've got some light ones and some yellow ones quite standing proud, and some red ones at the front. So, go in with a white if you like. We've just got to make sure it doesn't get too muddy. So sometimes maybe a bit of drying time in there. And also you could pop a base down if you want to put a little bit of a light green even, so that you can see that white amongst it. Then you can just mix up a bit of yeah, I'm just doing that there. So you've got a bit of a tint to start with before we pop the whites in. And then you can sit the bright whites on top of that. Just try to be a bit careful though, because it's going to get a bit muddy if I've not let this dry. So I'm just tapping that colour in across, because it's a flexible material. We can kind of tap things along quite easily. Just push it up to the edge. Um, and then I'm going to now kind of just make sure my brush is really clean so I can put some of this white on. Just literally pop in some of these whites a bit more thickly, so we get a really good, so you can go in and put quite a bit. So I've got a couple of millimeters on the end of my brush there, so it is really opaque. And this is the biggest difference between the acrylics and watercolors, so you can layer up these, the white is very opaque over the top. Put that in there. You can make that creamy colour as well. You don't have to go in with bright white if you don't want to, if it feels a bit less vivid. And then working in these flowers intermittently. And it really is still just pops of colour at this point because we're not really got into this front bit here where it's much more obvious what's going on. So just popping in just the intermittent one poking up. Just sitting proud there. Sometimes you get little groups together, don't you? And then sometimes they're a bit ad hoc. So there's a few here. But just how we position them as well can make a difference to knowing, to letting our brain work out what's going on there without actually putting the details in place. And then popping a few red ones in again. Before we go in with the base. And again, we just, getting in the base of some of these as well. So I would start with a bit of a dark base there. And then, so I'm going to bring this down a little bit where the edge is here. And make it I'm going to make it brown as well. Put brown and the hooker's green colour in because that will make it really quite dark there to make that feel. And I'm just going to flick it up really in between. Can't really see that depth there. It's a bit more kind of bright green there, but here it is. And then obviously we've got the edge of the grass here. So I'm going to pop in a bit of dark colour there at the edge of this bed and let those leaves spill over in a moment. And then you can see now I've abandoned my palette knife when I'm mixing small amounts of colours up. I tend to abandon it, to be fair. It's what happens when by the end of a painting, we're like, okay, we'll just mix it. That's fine as well. Pop a little bit of white just so we've got a bit of a pop of colour there. And then again, it's just about creating some of these shapes in here. You can pull some up a bit taller and then some a bit shorter. And then again, we just get the idea that it's spilling over there. And then here, we've got some brighter colours there. Okay. You can always add another green as well if you want a little bit of extra depth as well. And then we've got this grass here, haven't we? This grassed area. So again, you can almost stipple that because we want to try and get that really soft effect for the lawn. I would just go in with one main tone now. But just give it a really good stipple. It's how you get that velvety effect, really. I want to follow it round here. Stipple it on to start with. And I'm going to stipple on other colours in between and we'll blend them in. So we've got less kind of big textures. But if you really love using textures, then by all means, pop that in there. Mine's gone just run over onto my tape, which is fine. And then here, you know, where we've got some yellows, again, I'm just going to work it in and just stipple that in. I'm not worrying about the colours combining because I want them to. I want it to have that velvety feeling. So I'm literally going in with a bit of a stipple. And then I'm going to add some darker areas, shadowy areas. But again, you might not want to go in too dark with it. Go in a bit lighter to start with, and then you can always darken it. Sometimes people do it and they go, oh no, it's too dark. So that's fine. You can just go over with the colour as well if it's come out too dark. But this is the shadows that are cast underneath this bed, basically. You know, underneath the edge of these this tulip bed here, which is really dark. So it's darker there. And then again, you've got a little bit of a darker area under here. So we're just paying attention to those bits. And then if there's any highlights as well, I'm going to mix in a bit of white. So I don't want to go full on white, but I'm going to have there's a few little bits here that seem a bit lighter that are coming through. So just where maybe the light's shining through. And again, you can stipple those on. So we're just getting a softer feel for this. And then there's the last bed really. So again, I would tend to start with foliage, with the foliage, and then get the shape of the heads on. And I'd just be starting to be a bit more mindful, still loose, but a little bit more mindful about the shape we can put together to create those tulips. So our eye believes it's tulips as well. So I'm looking at this foliage that goes underneath first. So we've got, obviously there's bits so thick in areas that we can't see, but in others, so it's kind of a bit of guesswork. You can always put a little bit on first. So here at the edge, in between, we've got these tall stems up here, and a bit more of there. So I'm going to get this in. But I'm also going to pop in a lot of shadow between. So we can see that there's something like a long tall flower in there. Between, and some thicker bits in there as well at the front. But again, this will depend on how deep you want to go. You might not want to go too dark. It's one of those things you do, and then you think, oh no, I didn't like that, or yes, I do like that contrast. And I'm just going to continue, but I'm going to go lighter now down here. There's less, I'm seeing less shadow, although there might be some lighter tones. So what I can do is put in two tones together that are a bit lighter, brighter over here. Just following two bits on the brush. You get these lovely swathes of them, don't you? Just kind of coming through. There might be the odd shadow in there as well. So I'm trying to follow patterns because it can drive people mad because it's just like, where do I start? So just follow a pattern through, I would say. And then you can always apply more green. So I'm just going to run through a little bit more shadow because there's a little bit I'm noticing between there over here. So if you want to just say start with a section and then, you know, work from there. Here, so I'd be like looking at these because you get these reds and yellows, but over here it's quite red. And you can always darken the red as well by adding the tiniest bit of blue or the tiniest bit of purple or something to them, just to make them just a bit darker. So try either, but a very tiny amount of blue or purple because they're quite strong colours. So I'm going in there. Or try a different red that's a bit more blue based on the ones that are under the tree here. You know, I'm still really not going to do too much about the shape. I might just make it more of a cup shape. So you can do that by using a tip and then just pressing it down a little bit and just overlapping them like that. So there's more of a cup shape, or you can do it the other way, look. Like that. And these are a bit darker. Just working on the process, layering these ones up. And then if you've noticed there's any greens between them, then you can get those in before you layer any more in. So we're still not really needing too much definition in here. These are getting brighter here. It's these ones at the front that will tell us and put in, you know, tell us that these are tulips by the shape that the front ones are in. I'm making these bright around the side. Because it's where the sun's going through. But you can pop a dot of white in, you know, do some kind of pinky ready ones as well. Just, you can even like do that on the tip. So just go in with a pinkish tint there, look. Or a little white tint, whatever it is you can see, just to show, you know, kind of as an extra added tone, you know, just kind of makes it a bit more interesting. And then again, you know, the ones over here I'm seeing dark, so I've got a tiny bit of blue in. Tiny bit of blue in those. Just so that, again, they're a bit dark, a bit duller. So just have a little practice with you, just pushing down a little bit to kind of create that cup shape. But you need plenty of paint on, that's the key. They're a bit smaller here still. Let me pop up and down. Quite heavily populated as well. So what we'll do is we'll use a different tone in the ones where it's really thick in the middle here and there's not much foliage. And we can then go in with, say, I'm going to go in with a bit of yellow just on the top of the petal and just pull that down just a tad so it separates the flowers out a bit. So we can still see that shape over the top between them. And then if you want to go in with a finer brush, you can go in with a finer brush in that one. And then the ones that are coming near the front here are going to be bigger. We can, you know, pop almost two petals together. So, you know, here we go. So one side and another side. One side and another side. Just drag them down like that. One side and another side. And again, just on one side, just bring down a bit of, just swoop round a bit of colour. So again, it's still a suggestion. Now, if you've never seen tulips before, you might wonder what that flower was, but because we know how they behave, that's why using a suggestion works really well, because we've got that information, we've got that knowledge about what they are. Our brain works that bit out for us. Keep going, you know, two tones on your brush even, you can just try building up like that. Bit of yellow. And then, you know, you'll find what you discover is you get a little bit faster at doing it once you've had a go at doing one and you're feeling like you're getting there. It just speeds up a bit. And you can keep going all the way through with those. And then, get your lemon ones in as well. In between, and your greens. So I'm just going to make sure I've got enough that it's sitting on a. Better that you do this before, really. I'll pop a few more green strands in there before we put the yellows on top. And we can look at whether it's dark or light as well. And if it's easier, if you're struggling to see where those individual patches of green, just go in with a few like this. You could literally, the last few bits, especially when your eyes start getting a bit tired because you're really focusing, just get those in there. Just tap them all in, all the greens, and then you can, cover over, finishing covering over with those bright colours. So those yellows. So I'm going to use 2 tones for the yellow. I'm going to go in with this brighter yellow, this cadmium yellow, which is much warmer. And I'm just weaving them through. Weave through, weave through, weave through, weave through. So this one, you can see, is not very opaque. It's quite translucent. But I'm just laying down the foundation because I want 2 tones in. And again, that's how you get these two. So, one side, another. And you can do this for all flowers. You can just find out how you're moving your brush around creates the shape. It's just exploring it, just having a go with your brush marks. It doesn't matter if it's not highly accurate. It's just coming up with different ideas. And then again, I'm going in with the Naples yellow now. So I can even do a side each over the top. So we've got building that up. Just making 2 sides to it, really. Just really briefly. Hold on here. And you can even put more back, if you're wanting to put a bit more shape back in. If you think, oh, I've lost all the colour, just pop a little bit back in there, a bit of the warmer colour down on the tulips. And then just filling any gaps with that you want to with the other colours. And down there. Pop these in. And again, just pop a little bit of a yellow on each of those. Make it more daffodil-like. And then you can just finish off these final little bits that kind of come over the edge here. So just like a little twist, pull them over. There's just bits that are overlapping that just fall over onto the edge of the grass. I'll put a bit of shadow back into any of the bits that you've got. And then any highlights. So you might have just some use the other green. Maybe there. It's a bit dark at the edge of mine. So yeah, I'm just going to pull a few of these, just make them feel like there is some more depth and more shape to some of the foliage here with some of the leaves in there. And you know, what you would do if you were finishing off, you know, if we had a bit more time, I would just go and look for some consistency across my painting. So double check I've got all the highlights in that I want to have in there. Double check that everywhere that has got shadow in it is dark enough. So I'm just, you know, pop a few highlights where you want them. You know, and just go back across and see if there's anything else you want to add. But I think one of the really, really helpful things to do is just to actually have a little break from your work and sometimes just leave it overnight, because the beauty with acrylics is you can come back and add more the next day, because you're not waiting for it to dry. And then, you know, and pop it on a shelf, have some distance from it, because the more texture you use, you do definitely need to look at it from afar and see if, you know, you're not so close to it, then you're not so close to all the texture and everything. And that really, really helps, because we don't view the artwork we've got at home. We don't view it so close up, especially when we've got acrylics with a lot of texture in it. We do need that little bit of a step back from it. But I hope that's really helped and given some really good ideas. And thank you very much for having me. And I will come back and chat to everyone just for the last time.